The courtroom stood as a monument to human frailty, its high ceilings and oak-paneled walls echoing with the ghosts of countless verdicts. Sunlight filtered through tall windows, casting long shadows across the polished floors, where dust motes danced like indifferent spectators. Rows of benches filled with onlookers, reporters scribbling furiously, curious bystanders, and a few familiar faces from my past created a sea of judgment that I had to navigate. At the center of it all, I stood, a 68-year-old woman named Helen Hargrove, my hands trembling slightly as the bailiff approached. My daughter Sophia's laughter pierced the heavy air like a serrated knife, sharp, unyielding, and laced with a cruelty I never thought possible from the child I had birthed and raised. "Rot in jail, Mom," she sneered, her voice carrying across the room with deliberate volume, "while we blow every cent of your fortune on the life you never let us have." Those words hung suspended, a toxic cloud that choked the breath from my lungs. The bailiff, a burly man with a stoic expression honed from years of such scenes, clicked the handcuffs around my wrists. The cold steel bit into my thin, age-spotted skin, sending a jolt of pain that was almost welcome, a physical distraction from the emotional evisceration unfolding before me. But it was nothing, absolutely nothing, compared to the agony of watching my own flesh and blood celebrate my downfall as if it were a festive occasion. Her husband, Marcus, stood beside her, his arm wrapped possessively around her waist, a smug grin stretching across his handsome but deceitful face. He leaned in, whispering something in her ear, perhaps a joke about my impending misery, and she threw her head back, cackling even louder, ensuring the sound reached me across the expanse of the courtroom. It was a performance, meticulously calculated to wound, and it landed with precision. The judge, a stern figure in his late 50s named Harlan Thorpe, with wire-rimmed glasses perched on a hawkish nose and a perpetual frown etched into his features, slammed his gavel down repeatedly, the sharp cracks demanding order. "Silence in the court," he barked, his voice booming with authority born from decades on the bench. But the damage was irrevocable. The verdict had been delivered, and the chaos it unleashed couldn't be contained by mere wood on wood. 5 years in state prison for tax evasion and money laundering crimes. I had never committed crimes they had engineered with a web of forged financial records, paid-off witnesses, and a narrative so convincingly twisted that it had ensnared the jury like a spider's silk. At 68, I felt every year of my life weighing upon me like additional chains, heavier than the ones now binding my hands. My knees, weakened by arthritis from years of standing at desks and pacing floors in worry, threatened to buckle, but I locked them in place, drawing on a reservoir of strength I didn't know I still possessed. To understand the depth of this betrayal, one must rewind to the origins of our fractured family. My husband, John, had been the anchor of our lives, a kind, hard-working man who ran a small hardware store in our suburban town. When Sophia was 15, cancer claimed him swiftly, a merciless thief that stole not just his life, but the stability of ours. I was 53 then, suddenly a widow thrust into a world of single parenthood and financial desperation. The store had to be sold to cover medical bills, leaving us with a modest inheritance that I guarded like a sacred trust. I took night classes in accounting while working days as a secretary, my fingers flying over keyboards until they ached, building a small consulting firm from scratch. Every client won, every late-night audit completed, was for Sophia, for her education, her dreams, her future. I skipped personal luxuries. New clothes were mended instead of replaced. Vacations were postcards from friends. Social life was sacrificed on the altar of motherhood. Sophia grew up in a home filled with love, if not extravagance, and I thought that was enough. But as she entered adulthood, cracks appeared. College was funded, but she dropped out after 2 years, citing boredom. Jobs came and went, each failure blamed on bad luck or unfair bosses. When she met Marcus at 2080, a charismatic salesman with a string of failed ventures, I was cautious. He was 10 years her senior, with a charm that masked his ambition. They married in a lavish ceremony I partially funded, and I gifted them a down payment on a home, hoping it would stabilize them. But the demands escalated. "Mom, Just a loan for Marcus's new business ideas. Foolproof, Sophia would plead, her eyes wide with feigned innocence. I gave in, time and again, until my savings dwindled and my wariness turned to outright refusal. That's when the venom surfaced. Accusations of hoarding, of being controlling, of denying her what Dad would have wanted. I didn't know then that Marcus was the puppeteer, whispering plans of seizure, but hindsight reveals the orchestration. The trial itself had been a prolonged ordeal, stretching over 6 grueling weeks that felt like an eternity in purgatory. It began with jury selection, where potential jurors eyed me with curiosity or suspicion. Their biases laid bare in voir dire questions. My public defender, a young man named Alex Ramirez, overburdened with cases, did his best, but the prosecution was a juggernaut funded by mysterious sources later revealed to be Marcus's shady connections. The opening statements set the tone. The prosecutor, a slick woman named Carla Mendoza with a reputation for ruthless efficiency, painted me as a greedy matriarch. Helen Hargrove is no victim, she declared, her voice resonating through the room. She is a calculating woman who siphoned funds from family trusts, evaded taxes, and laundered money to hoard wealth while her daughter struggled. This is betrayal at its core, a mother turning on her child for personal gain. I sat at the defense table, my hands clasped tightly to hide their trembling. As tears welled up unbidden, Alex patted my shoulder, whispering, "Stay strong," but the words rang hollow against the tide of accusation. The emotional pinnacle arrived during the witness testimonies, each one a hammer blow to my soul. Sophia took the stand first, dressed in a modest gray blouse and skirt that screamed contrived innocence. She ascended the steps with a slight hesitation, as if the weight of her lies burdened her physically. Sworn in, she dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, her voice quivering artfully as she began. "My mother always controlled everything," she said, pausing for dramatic effect, allowing the jury to absorb her feigned vulnerability. "From the time Dad died, she hoarded the money, saying it was for our future. But when Marcus and I needed help starting our business, buying a home, she accused us of being lazy. She hid assets, evaded taxes to keep it all for herself. I begged her to be honest, but she threatened to cut me off if I spoke out." The jury leaned forward, some nodding sympathetically, their faces a mirror of compassion for the wronged daughter. I felt a sob rise in my throat, choking me like a noose. How could she twist our history so? This was the girl I'd nursed through childhood illnesses, staying up all night with cool cloths on her fevered brow. The teen I'd comforted after John's death, holding her as she wept for hours. The young woman I'd supported through failed relationships and career missteps. I'd sold heirlooms to fund her whims, skipped meals to save for her tuition. Now, her lies transformed those sacrifices into weapons of my undoing. I couldn't hold back any longer. A quiet whimper escaped me, drawing Judge Thorpe's sharp glance. "Counsel, control your client," he warned, his gavel hovering. Alex leaned in. Helen breathed, but the tears streamed down my face, hot and unrelenting. The courtroom blurred, the faces of spectators merging into a judgmental haze. An old friend from church, seated in the back row, shook her head in disbelief, her own eyes misty with what I hoped was solidarity. The pain was physical, a tightness in my chest, as if my heart were being squeezed in a vice, each beat a reminder of the bond shattered beyond repair. Marcus followed, his testimony a seamless extension of Sophia's deceit. He was charming on the stand, with his neatly trimmed beard, pressed suit, an earnest expression that could sell ice to Eskimos. He spoke with a measured tone, as if recounting a tragic tale. "Helen manipulated the books to frame us as the greedy ones," he claimed, his eyes locking onto mine with a cold detachment that sent shivers down my spine. "We tried to help manage the family finances, offering advice and even investing our own money, but she turned on us, forging documents to make it look like we were the thieves. It broke Sophia's heart, her own mother doing this." A juror, a middle-aged man with a kind face and calloused hands suggesting a laborer's life, wiped away a tear, clearly moved by the betrayed couple's story. I buried my face in my hands, my body shaking with silent sobs. That's not true, I whispered to no one in particular, my voice lost in the murmurs of the room. Inside, rage battled sorrow, rage at their audacity to pervert reality, sorrow for the family bonds irreparably shattered. Flashbacks flooded me. Family dinners where Marcus complimented my cooking while eyeing my checkbook. Holidays where Sophia's hugs felt increasingly perfunctory. Phone calls where requests for money replaced genuine conversation. The defense's turn brought little respite from the emotional torrent. Alex called character witnesses, longtime neighbors who spoke of my community involvement, former colleagues who praised my ethical accounting practices, even a pastor who attested to my generosity. Helen Hargrove is the pillar of integrity, one said, but the prosecution cross-examined them ruthlessly, planting seeds of doubt with questions like, "Were you aware of her secret bank accounts?" When I took the stand, the spotlight felt like an interrogation lamp, burning into my soul. My voice cracked from the start as I recounted my life. "I loved my daughter more than anything," I said, tears flowing freely down my cheeks. "After John died, I worked 2 jobs to give her everything: a good education, a safe home, opportunities I never had. These accusations, they're lies, fabricated to steal what I've built through years of sacrifice." The prosecutor pounced like a predator sensing weakness. "You claim innocence, yet the evidence is overwhelming: bank statements showing hidden transfers, emails from your account discussing tax dodges. How do you explain that?" I broke down completely, sobbing into the microphone, my words garbled, "Because they forged it all. My own child. How could she do this to me?" The jury shifted uncomfortably in their seats, but I saw skepticism in their eyes. Perhaps my emotional outburst was perceived as desperation rather than authenticity. Judge Thorpe called a recess, banging his gavel, but the damage lingered. My vulnerability laid bare for all to dissect. In the holding room during breaks, I paced the small space, my mind a whirlwind of memories. John's deathbed words, "Take care of our girl Helen, she's all we have." How had I failed so spectacularly? Sophia's childhood laughter echoed in my ears, contrasting sharply with her courtroom mockery. The closing arguments were the final assault. Prosecutor Mendoza hammered home the narrative. "This is a woman who betrayed her family for greed. Don't let her tears fool you, they're the crocodile variety." Alex countered with passion but limited evidence. "The inconsistencies in the documents scream forgery. Helen Hargrove is the victim here, not the villain." As the jury deliberated, I sat in another holding area, replaying every moment, my heart aching with a grief deeper than loss. It was the death of trust, of maternal love twisted into something unrecognizable. Hours stretched like days until the bell rang, summoning us back. The verdict reading was surreal. "Guilty on all counts," the foreman announced, his voice flat. Gasps filled the room, but Sophia's whoop of joy cut through. I collapsed into my chair, the world tilting, as Judge Thorpe sentenced me to 5 years, his words a blur. Now, post-verdict, Sophia and Marcus gathered their things with the casual arrogance of victors, high-fitting subtly as they packed briefs. She glanced back at me one final time, her eyes gleaming with malice that pierced like daggers. It wasn't just triumph, it was hatred, pure and distilled. A look that said I was nothing more than an obstacle finally removed. To her, I was an outdated relic, a barrier to the lavish life she craved: designer clothes, exotic trips, the status symbols she believed were her birthright. They sauntered out through the swinging doors, their steps light, already plotting their indulgences: a yacht rental in the Mediterranean, perhaps, or a luxury villa tour in Tuscany funded by the Empire, the first built through decades of grit and sacrifice. The deputy, a young woman with sympathetic eyes hidden behind a professional mask, pulled me toward the side door marked "Prisoner Exit." My arthritic knees protested with each step, shooting pains up my legs. But I held my head high, refusing to break in front of the lingering spectators who whispered judgments like venomous secrets. An old neighbor from my street, Mrs. Patel, averted her gaze, shame coloring her cheeks. Shame coloring her cheeks. She had testified for me. But now the verdict branded me guilty in her eyes too. The corridor to the holding area reeked of stale coffee, cheap disinfectant, and the underlying scent of despair. Linoleum floors scuffed from the shuffle of countless defeated souls. Other inmates passed us, their eyes hollow with resignation, some muttering curses, others silent in their misery, all sharing that universal expression of absolute defeat. But I wasn't defeated, not yet. Deep within, a spark flickered, a secret they didn't know, a truth that could upend everything. We entered a dim, windowless room with faded blue walls peeling at the edges and metal benches chained to the floor to prevent misuse. Behind a scarred desk sat Officer Elena Vasquez, her uniform crisp and starched, despite the years etched into her face, deep crow's feet around her dark eyes, gray threads streaking her tightly pulled back hair. Her badge glinted under the harsh fluorescent light, and those eyes held a weary empathy that stood out like a beacon in this bleak place. She had the look of someone who'd seen too much suffering, too many lives derailed, yet retained a spark of humanity that the system hadn't extinguished. The escorting deputy handed over my fila-thick manila folder, stuffed with papers detailing my crimes, and left with a nod, the door clanging shut like a prison gate, reverberating in my ears. Elena flipped through the papers, her movements deliberate and practiced, born of countless routines like this one. I sat on the hard bench, the handcuffs now warmed by my skin but still chafing, and let my mind replay the nightmare in vivid detail. Sophia, the girl I'd rocked through fevers and heartbreaks, reading bedtime stories until my voice hoarsened, the woman I'd supported through college tuition payments and emotional upheavals from failed romances, had orchestrated this catastrophe. After her father's death, I'd worked endless hours in dimly lit offices, poring over ledgers, scrimping on every expense to give her stability and opportunities. I'd celebrated her milestones, graduations, birthdays with homemade cakes and heartfelt cards, even when exhaustion clawed at me. And now, she and Marcus reveled in my ruin, convinced I'd fade away in obscurity. A forgotten old woman rotting in a cell while they luxuriated in my hard-earned wealth, but they didn't know my secret. A truth so profound, it could shatter their victory like fragile glass. 8 months ago, my life had taken an unexpected turn toward hope and love. After years of widowhood, marked by lonely evenings with books and television for company, I attended a charity gala for cancer researcher, cause eternally close to my heart since John's battle. The event was held in a grand ballroom, crystal chandeliers sparkling overhead, guests in tuxedos and gowns mingling with champagne flutes in hand. I was there as a modest donor, dressed in a simple black gown I'd owned for years, quietly bidding on silent auction items. That's when Victor Langston approached me near a display of artwork donated by local artists. He was 62, tall with silver hair that caught the light, and piercing blue eyes that held a depth of loss mirroring my own. His wife had passed from illness 5 years prior, and we bonded over shared grief and resilience. "It's hard to start over after such loss," he'd said, his voice soft and genuine amid the chatter. "But sometimes, life surprises you with second chances." Our conversation flowed effortlessly from the art to our lives, our losses, our small victories. Coffee dates followed, then dinners at cozy restaurants where we shared stories of our pasts. Victor was honest about his world from the start, the high-stakes realm of tech innovation, where his AI and cybersecurity firm had amassed a billion-dollar empire, political ties that reached the highest levels, media influence that could shape public opinion, competitors who played dirty. "I have enemies who'd use anyone close to me as leverage," he'd explained over a candlelit table. "Let's keep us private until I can ensure your safety, bodyguards, secure communications, the works." I agreed without hesitation, cherishing the secrecy. After years of emotional isolation, this was my haven, a bubble of joy untouched by the world's harshness. We married in a quiet ceremony at his secluded mountain retreat, just us, an officiant he'd known for decades, and 2 trusted aides as witnesses. No fanfare, no lavish reception, just profound vows exchanged under a canopy of stars. I wore a simple ivory dress that flowed like a dream, he a tailored suit that accentuated his commanding presence. As we exchanged rings, plain gold bands we wore on chains around our necks for discretion. Tears streamed down my face, not of sadness, but of renewal and gratitude. I promise to protect you, Helen, he'd whispered, kissing my forehead. You're my world now. I hadn't told Sophia. It was meant to be temporary, until Victor arranged the necessary protections. But the betrayal escalated to fast lawsuits filed, assets frozen, my life upended before I could share the news. I didn't want to drag him into the mess, thinking I could handle it alone, a foolish pride that nearly cost me everything. Now, in this holding room, that secret was my lifeline, my last card to play. Elena sighed deeply, rubbing her temples as if warding off a headache from the endless parade of misery. I seized the moment of her distraction, my hand slipping into the lining of my wool kota garment. I'd worn throughout the trial for its comforting familiarity, its hidden pocket a silent guardian of my plan. Inside was a folded note, scrawled in the dim light of my holding cell the night before, my hand shaking from exhaustion, fear, and the cold that seeped through the thin blanket. My fingers, gnarled from age and years of typing, trembled as I extracted it, placing it subtly beside her stack of forms, making it look like it belonged among the official documents. Transfer vans due in half an hour, Mrs. Hargrove, Elena said, her voice kind but firm, laced with the fatigue of long shifts and emotional tolls. Need anything? Water, restroom, maybe a moment to collect yourself. Yes, please, water, I croaked, my throat parched from hours of silence, suppressed sobs, and the dry air of the courtroom. She rose, her chair scraping against the concrete floor with a grating sound, and turned to a cooler in the corner, pouring from a plastic pitcher into a paper cup. Her baphotomy. I adjusted the note slightly to ensure it caught her eye upon return. My pulse thundered in my ears like a drumbeat of fate, visions of failure flashing through my mind, her dismissing it as the ramblings of a desperate old woman, crumpling it and alerting authorities, sealing my fate in a prison cell for years. What if Victor's number was wrong? What if he was unreachable, deep in a meeting, or flying across time zones? The doubts swirled like a storm, but I pushed them down with sheer will. This was my only shot, my Hail Mary in a game rigged against me. She returned with the cup, handing it over carefully, mindful of my cuffed hands that made even simple tasks awkward. I sipped slowly, the lukewarm water tasting like salvation, a brief respite in the chaos. As she sat, her gaze landed on the note, her brow furrowed in confusion, a slight tilt of her head as she picked it up, unfolding it with caution, as if it might contain something explosive or illicit. The words I'd written in careful, block letters to ensure legibility. My daughter doesn't know about my new husband. Call Victor Langston at this number. Tell him his wife is convicted. For your help, a secure future for you and yours awaits. Below. The phone number, each digit etched with precision, despite my trembling hand. Elena's eyes widened, scanning the note repeatedly, her breath catching. She whispered, almost to herself, Victor Langston, ... The Victor Langston, the billionaire tech guy from all the magazines. I nodded, meeting her stare steadily, willing her to see the sincerity, the desperation, the truth in my eyes. Everyone knew him, a mogul whose innovations in AI and cybersecurity had revolutionized industries, building a billion-dollar empire from a garage startup, political ties that reached the White House. Media influence that shaped narratives, a name that opened doors and crushed obstacles with equal ease. Her face paled, a mix of shock, disbelief, and dawning realization washing over her features. She reread the note, her hands shaking slightly as she held the paper. If this is real, if you're not pulling some kind of trick or hallucinating from stress, ... It is, I said softly, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. Every word. Victor and I married in secret 8 months ago. Sophia has no idea he's been my rock, but I kept it hidden to protect him from this mess. She pocketed the note carefully, as if it were a fragile artifact, conflict warring on her features. She glanced at the door, ensuring privacy, then back at me with a vulnerability that humanized her. Why me? Why trust a stranger like this? I've seen all kinds of ploys in here, notes, bribes, threats. What makes you think I'll help? Because you have kind eyes, I replied honestly, drawing on the intuition honed from years of reading people in business, and because I have no one else, no family left, no friends who could intervene in time. You're my last hope. Elena hesitated, then opened up, her voice lowering as she shared a piece of herself, a rare crack in the armor of her profession. I've got a son, 22, with autism. He needs constant care therapies, medications, a stable environment. My husband passed last year from cancer, just like your first, leaving me to handle everything alone. We're barely scraping by in a rundown apartment downtown, the kind where the walls are thin and the heat cuts out in winter. Bills pile up like snowdrifts, and I work double shifts just to keep the lights on and food on the table. If this could change that, if there's even a chance this is legit and not some scam, Victor will make it so, I assured her, my voice gaining strength from the certainty of his character. He's a man of honor, of his word. He'll reward you beyond imagination, a home, financial security, support for your son's needs, whatever you dream of to ease your burden. She nodded, resolve hardening in her eyes like steel forged in fire. Elena pulled out her personal phone from a locked drawer under her desk, her fingers unsteady as she dialed the number. The rings echoed in the small room, each one stretching time into agony. My breath caught in my throat. Had it been too long since I'd spoken to him? Our last call, days ago during a brief courtroom recess. I'd hidden the trial's toll, not wanting to burden him amid his overseas deals in Singapore, negotiating a massive merger that could redefine his company. Everything's fine, I'd lied, my voice cracking slightly, just tired from the proceedings. I love you, Victor. Langston, his voice barked on the line after the fourth ring, clipped and businesslike, the tone he used for high-stakes calls with executives and investors. Mr. Langston, this is Officer Elena Vasquez from the County Detention Center, she said, her voice steadying as she spoke. Your wife, Helen. She asked me to call. She's been convicted on fraud charges, awaiting transfer to prison. A beat of silence, thick and ominous, hung on the line, then a roar that made Elena flinch and pulled the phone slightly away from her ear. Convicted. What the hell happened? Where is she exactly? Who did this to her? Tell me everything now. Elena glanced at me for confirmation, then passed the phone. I pressed it to my ear awkwardly with my cuffed hands, the chain rattling slightly. Hearing Victor's voice, so familiar, so strong, cracked my resolve wide open. Tears I'd held back in court flowed freely, streaming down my cheeks in hot rivulets. Victor, I'm so sorry. I should have told you sooner. The trial? It was all lies, all fabricated by Sophia and Marcus. Helen, my love, slow down, take a breath and talk to me, he urged, his tone shifting instantly from fury to tender concern. The voice that had soothed me through our late-night conversations. I spilled it all in a rush: the accusations of tax evasion and laundering, the forged evidence presented as ironclad, the sentence of 5 years. They're gloating in the courtroom like victors in a war. They want my estate, my business, everything I've built. They don't know about us, about our marriage. I thought I could handle it alone, but I was wrong. His tone turned lethal, a controlled rage I'd rarely heard, reserved for boardroom battles. Your own daughter did this. Unbelievable. Stay put, don't move, don't talk to anyone else. Pass the phone back to the officer. Elena took it, listening intently as Victor issued commands like a general deploying troops. Yes, sir. Understood. I'll keep her here. Safe. She hung up, awe etched on her face as she set the phone down. He's mobilizing everything. Said a stay order's coming through any minute from Judge Thorpe himself. Your husband's a force of nature, Mrs. Hargrove. He just rattled off Nate's lawyers, judges, even the doll-like there on speed dial. We waited in tense silence, the clock on the wall ticking with maddening slowness, each second a torture of anticipation. Elena shared more about her life to fill the void, the daily struggles with her son's therapies, the loneliness of widowhood, the emotional toll of her job where she witnessed injustice daily. I've seen innocent people broken here, she admitted, her voice soft. Families torn apart over lies. If you're one of the innocent, I'll fight for you with everything I have. Minutes later, her desk phone rang sharply, jolting us both. She answered, her face shifting from tension to astonishment as she listened. Yes, Judge Harlan. Immediately. Understood, sir. Hanging up, she looked at me with wide eyes, a hint of a smile breaking through. Temporary hold on your transfer. Procedural irregularities cited in the verdict. Your lawyers en route with a full legal team. Mr. Langston just moved mountains in less than 10 minutes. Relief washed over me like a tidal wave, weakening my knees as I sank onto the bench. Tears of gratitude mixing with exhaustion, I covered my face with my hands, the cuffs clinking, and let out a shuddering breath. Victor had pulled strings, judges he knew from philanthropy events, attorneys on retainer for his empire, all set in motion within moments of that call. An hour later, the door burst open with authoritative force. In strode a sharp-suited woman in her 40s, Asian American with sleek black hair tied in a professional ponytail, and a nonsense demeanor that exuded competence. She carried a leather briefcase bulging with documents. Lydia Chen, representing Mrs. Hargrove, she announced, her voice cutting through the air like a blade. We're walking out now. Here's the emergency stay order, signed by Judge Thorpe. Behind her entered Victor, tall and commanding, his silver hair slightly disheveled from haste, his blue eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that spoke volumes of love and fury. He crossed the room in long strides, ignoring protocol and the grimy surroundings, and knelt before me, his expensive suit brushing the dirty floor without a care. He cupped my face gently, his thumbs wiping away my tears with tenderness. Helen, my love, I'm here. It's over. No one's taking you anywhere ever again. I collapsed into his arms, sobbing against his shoulder. The scent of his cologne, sandalwood, and citrusa, reminder of our stolen moments of happiness. I was so scared. I whispered, my voice muffled. They almost won. Victor, they almost destroyed me. Not on my watch, he murmured, holding me tight, his hands rubbing soothing circles on my back. Then, turning to Alina, his voice firm but filled with gratitude, Officer Vasquez, you made this possible. You risked your position, your career, for a stranger based on a note. Name your needy anything. I always repay debts, especially those of kindness. Alina hesitated, tears glistening in her eyes as she absorbed the reality. A stable home for my son and me. Security, so I don't have to worry about tomorrow's bills or his future. Done, Victor said without pause, pulling out his phone and texting his assistant. My team will handle it. Immediately a condo, in a safe suburb, fully paid. A trust fund for his care, education, therapies, whatever he needs. And if you want a new job, away from this soul-draining place, say the word. Perhaps in one of my company's administrative divisions. She wept quietly, covering her mouth with her hand. Thank you. I can't believe this. I just did what felt right. You gave my wife hope when she had none left, Victor replied, his eyes sincere. That's priceless in a world like this. We left that night, not to my old home too risky, with assets still frozen and potential threats from Marcus S. Associates, but to Victor S. penthouse in the heart of the city, a sprawling fortress atop a gleaming skyscraper, guarded by private security like a modern castle. The elevator ride-up was silent. Victor's arm around me as I leaned on him for support, my legs still shaky from the day's ordeal. The penthouse was a haven of modern luxury, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the twinkling city lights, plush leather furniture arranged around a stone fireplace, art pieces from around the world adorning the walls. But that night, it was simply safety, a sanctuary where I could finally breathe. Over the following days, Lydia and her team dismantled the case with surgical precision, working from the penthouse's conference room turned war room. Papers strewn across a massive oak table, laptops humming with activity. Lydia, sharp and relentless, uncovered the layers of forgery, the tax forms with mismatched dates, auditors bribed with wire transfers traced to Marcus's accounts, emails from my address but sent from IP locations matching Sophia's home. They were thorough but sloppy, she said, pointing to discrepancies on a projected screen. A forensic expert will blow this open in the appeal. We've got them. Victor oversaw it all, his phone a constant buzz of calls to influencers, ensuring media coverage stayed neutral or favorable, pressuring the DA for an immediate review. I shared my story in exhaustive detail, the subtle manipulations, starting years ago, the escalating demands for money disguised as loans, the isolation as they turned friends against me with whispered rumors of my stinginess. It started with small asks, I recalled, my voice trembling as I relived the memories, then threats when I said no. They froze my accounts so fast I couldn't even hire a private lawyer. The appeal hearing was another emotional crucible, returning me to the same courtroom that had condemned me. The air was thick with tension, the same benches filled with reporters now sensing a scandal in reverse. I faced Judge Thorpe again, who looked chagrined as he reviewed the new evidence stack. Lydia presented meticulously, Your Honor, the original conviction was based on fraud. We have digital forensics proving document alterations, witness recantations under oath, bank records showing bribes, a key auditor, a nervous man named Harold Klein who had been paid by Marcus, cracked under pressure on the stand. They offered me $10,000 to alter the records, he admitted, his voice shaking, sweat beading on his forehead. I was desperate, my wife sick, bills piling up. But it was all lies I fabricated, the evasion claims. When I testified, the weight of the past weeks crashed down. I built my life for Sophia, I said, tears streaming as I gripped the witness box. Sacrificed everything after my husband died, nights without sleep, years without joy, all for her. To have her betray me like this, it's unbearable, Your Honor. Sophia, present in custody, chains for the hearing, sneered from the defense table, her face a mask of defiance. The judge's face softened, but the prosecutor's cross-examination was brutal. You hid your marriage to Mr. Langston. Why? The secrecy if you're innocent. For safety, I sobbed, my voice breaking. Victor's world is dangerous. We wanted to protect each other. The appeal panel nodded empathetically, one woman dabbing her eyes with a tissue. Victor's hand in mine from the front row was my anchor amid the storm, his presence a silent vow of support. The ruling came swiftly after deliberations, charges dropped, case dismissed with prejudice, my record expunged. Mrs. Hargrove, this court apologizes for the grave injustice inflicted upon you, Judge Thorpe said, his voice heavy with regret. The evidence of conspiracy is overwhelming. Arrest warrants are issued for Sophia Hargrove, Marcus Hargrove, and accomplices on charges of conspiracy, fraud, forgery, and perjury. But the deepest cut, the revelation that pierced my heart anew, came during the investigations that followed. Lydia's team uncovered that Sophia had a daughter, my granddaughter, Lily, 6 years old, from a brief marriage she'd hidden from me entirely. The marriage had been to Greg, a quiet teacher she'd met in college, but it ended acrimoniously when Sophia left for Marcus, abandoning Lily in Greg's care. They lived in a small town 2 hours away, and Sophia had sporadically sent money but never visited. Worse, she'd poisoned Lily against me with tales of my greed, telling the child I was a monster who stole her mommy's money, the reason they couldn't afford nicer things. Greg reached out after the news of my vindication broke in the papers, his voice tentative on the phone as he explained. Sophia told Lily you were the reason we struggled financially. But I see the truth, now she's the manipulator, using lies to cover her absence. Meeting Lily was a whirlwind of emotions that left me reeling for days. We arranged it at a neutral park near Greg's home, Victor by my side for moral support, his hand squeezing mine as we approached. Lily, with curly brown hair bouncing in pigtails, and eyes so like Sophia's as a child wide, curious, innocent, hid behind Greg's leg, peeking out shyly at the strangers. Greg knelt down, encouraging her. This is your Grandma Helen, Lily, the one I told you about, the good one. Are you really my grandma? She asked, her voice small and hesitant, clutching a stuffed rabbit to her chest. Yes, sweetheart, I replied, kneeling despite the sharp protest from my knees, tears welling in my eyes. And I'm not what they said. I'm here now, and I love you already, even though we've just met. She hesitated, studying me with the unfiltered gaze of childhood, then stepped forward, hugging me tentatively around the neck. You smell like cookies and flowers, she said. and I laughed through my sobs, the sound freeing a knot in my chest I'd carried for months. That's my perfume, little one. Would you like to bake cookies with me sometime? Over the following weeks, bonds formed, slowly but surely. Lily visited the penthouse, marveling at the panoramic views, drawing colorful pictures for my fridge with crayons Victor bought. He adored her instantly, teaching her simple coding games on his tablet, spoiling her with books about adventures and magic, taking her to parks where she could run free. Greg became an unexpected ally, sharing custody stories over coffee, grateful for our financial support to ease his burdens, a college fund for Lily, help with his mortgage. You've given her a family she didn't know she had, he said one evening, his eyes grateful. Meanwhile, justice closed in on Sophia and Marcus with inexorable force. The arrests were timed for maximum impact, a strategic move by Lydia to underscore the irony. Sophia had organized a victory gala at an upscale venue downtown, a lavish party funded by my seized assets before the appeal. Invites went out to friends and investors, promising a celebration of new beginnings. We crashed it. Victor's influence securing discreet entry through a side door. The room was opulent crystal chandeliers, casting rainbow prisms, tables laden with caviar and champagne, live music from a string quartet. Sophia held court in a sparkling red gown that screamed excess, Marcus by her side in a tuxedo, toasting their hard-won justice with glasses raised high. As we entered the ballroom, whispers spread like wildfire through the crowd. Heads turned, conversations halted. Sophia's face drained of color, seeing me free, arm in arm with Victor, dressed in an elegant navy gown he'd bought for the occasion. Mom, how, ... You're supposed to be, ... she stammered, her glass slipping from her fingers to shatter on the marble floor. Hello, Sophia, I said, my voice steady and clear, projecting across the hushed room. Nice party. Shame, it's your last as a free woman. You've spent my money well, I see. Who the hell are you? She snarled at Victor, her composure cracking as panic set in. Your stepfather, he replied coolly, his tone laced with steel. The one dismantling your lies one by one. Police swarmed through the doors moments later, badges flashing, voices authoritative. Sophia Hargrove, Marcus Hargrove, you are under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, forgery, and perjury, the lead officer announced, reading rights as handcuffs clicked. Sophia's screams echoed through the grand hall. This is a mistake. Mom, tell them it's a lie. As they dragged her out, her gown tearing slightly on the threshold, Marcus begged futilely, his charm evaporated into pathetic pleas. We can explain it's all a misunderstanding. Post-trial revelations deepened the wound like salt rubbed in. Marcus had an accomplice, a shady financier named Derek Voss who'd bankrolled the scheme from the shadows, planning to launder my fortune through cryptic crypto ventures and offshore accounts. Lydia's team froze it all, reclaiming every cent, plus punitive damages that swelled my accounts beyond what I'd lost. Voss was arrested in a dawn raid, his empire crumbling under the weight of evidence. My home, briefly transferred via forgery to Sophia's name in a desperate last move, was restored through court order. Victor bought adjacent land, expanding it into a family compound with lush gardens, a guest house for Greg and Lily during visits, even a small library filled with books for all ages. We confronted the final loose ends at the house itself, where surveillance showed Sophia out on bail pending sentencing, and Derek packing valuables, planning a flight to a non-extradition country. We arrived at dusk, security in tow, the setting sun casting long shadows over the familiar facade. The house felt violated upon entry. Furniture sold off in hasty auctions, walls stripped of family photos, rooms echoing with emptiness. In the kitchen, we overheard their frantic conversation. The buyer, as closing tomorrow, $1.2 million wired to the Cayman account. Sophia laughed nervously. We'll disappear to Mexico, start fresh. I stepped in, Victor beside me. Not if we stop you first. Panic ensued, their faces twisting in horror. How did you know? She gasped, dropping a box of stolen heirlooms. We have everything: recordings, confessions, traced transfers, Victor said calmly. Police arrived minutes later, adding flight risk and money laundering charges to their ledgers. Sophia was sentenced to 10 years, Marcus to 12, Was to 15. I visited Sophia once in prison, seeking closure in the sterile visiting room divided by glass. Why? I asked, tears falling as I pressed the phone to my ear. You hoarded it all, Mom, she spat, unrepentant, her eyes cold. We deserved more. You never let us live. You earned nothing but this cage, I said, hanging up and walking away. My heart heavy but finally free from the chains of guilt. Now, at 68, life blooms anew in ways I never imagined. I garden with Lily, her small hands planting seeds beside mine, her laughter healing old wounds like balm. Greg co-parents seamlessly, our families blending in weekend barbecues and holiday celebrations. Victor and I travel romantic getaways to Paris, family trips to Tokyo, our love deeper, forged in the fire of adversity. Alina thrives in her new condo, her son enrolled in top therapies, courtesy of Victor's promise. She even took a job in his company's HR department, finding purpose beyond the badge. Family isn't blood, it's choice, loyalty, love that withstands storms. Betrayal taught me, advocate fiercely, even when your voice shakes like leaves in wind. Forgive for your own peace, not for the unrepentant. Rebuild boldly, embracing unexpected joys that light the path forward. Women like me, seasoned by decades of trial and rise, triumph with a resilience that defies age. My story ends not in loss, but in renewal, proof that happiness can bloom anew, vibrant and unyielding, even in the winter years of life. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this story. If you felt connected, please like and subscribe to the channel for more real and emotional stories. Visit my channel for more content,